I mean, all those other years where I was trying to ask for when I could have used it, and she knew that. She's only willing to write a letter of reference or recommendation for me after the case against her friend for rape gets dropped, and after I'm so defamed there's hardly a way for me to repair my name unless I win the lawsuit. And basically I'm being forced out of the lawsuit. So it was kind of like she knew that it didn't really matter if she wrote a letter of reference. It wasn't going to be any good for me. But it made her look like she had no part in concealing things that she knew. It made her look like she was maybe my friend. And that was what happened with Nora Crevens. That she then also divorced her husband because she found out he had had a child at that time outside of her marriage before he met her. But she didn't know that he'd always had this child, and she felt deceived that he hadn't told her about it. So they got divorced. And I don't know if Barry would have any insights at all, but her full name was Barry Crevens Cranshaw. Cranshaw was was Barry's last name, and her Russian Jewish last name was Crevens. So, I'm not sure, but Nora Crevens was Russian Jewish. Lorraine and Rabbi Rose were Russian Jewish, or at least Lorraine was Polish Jewish and had some big painting of a Russian Jewish thing on her wall. It's her favorite. And Josh Gatov was Russian Jewish. And I'm sorry, but the Russian Jewish community in Oregon is really not huge. There's no possible way that they and Ed Israel and the editor for Willamette Week didn't know each other. No possible way. So there developed a joint motive to work against me, I believe, between what the Abbey didn't want to come to the surface and what their fears were about me, and with what the Jewish community was concealing. And I never talked about Nora before, ever, not in my blog in this way, and not to anyone about, my concerns and ideas, but the reason why I think I'm bringing it up now is because I never forgot my instincts on that night of the Christmas concert. And then later when I was going to, and then also when I was in counseling, and, and then all of a sudden this director was saying, just out of the blue, like, the only people who had ever said something about harassment was the Abbey people. That was after the Christmas concert. But out of the blue, he's bringing something up, sort of echoing what they were saying, but with no grounds to do so. And so I really wondered who he knew or who he was talking to. And I thought he was, from what I understood, that director was a Protestant man. But, I don't know. But here, the person I believe I had told Nora possibly I was going to go to counseling, and then I get assigned to Carol. A woman named Carol. Of all things, And nothing against this woman who is an Asian woman who just happened to have the Americanized name of Carol, but, it's not like these Jewish people didn't know the United Kingdom Carol Middleton. And, so the entire time my parents are quiet about everything. And I don't think I told them about everything, but there's been a lot of really hushed insults against me and against my family, with people laughing, on the outside at what they're doing. So the other thing that I would I guess on that same topic of Western psychological or counseling, I believe that I had forgotten the name of the place by the time I was in Washington and told I had to have a psych eval, and then the only place that they were going to have me do it at was this Western psychological place. And I had forgotten that that's, I believe, the same place that's connected to the place that I went to for counseling for the rape years earlier. And there might be a there was potential conflict of interest with that, because I hadn't realized at the time that I was having that psych eval. I mean, aside from the state conflict of interest, I didn't realize that that was going to be the same, the clinic that was, I think, connected to the one that I went to, where they were, someone was talking to someone, and there was a problem with it. So the woman who did the evaluation was Lucretia Krebs. Not sure what kind of a last name Krebs is. You could probably make some sort of a poem, a rhyming poem, including Krebs and Krebins. So the other thing that I would like to mention of people that might be connected to people who had something to do with me and my son, or with, my being implanted or whatever, is a man that I personally liked, and I thought he was funny. Oh, the other person too that I knew around that time was Larry Galizio. He was also Jewish. He was Italian Jewish. He was my debate teacher. I took debate, and he just happened to be the teacher, a professor for that. And I believe he also knew what was going on. So the other, while I was in debate, there was a Jewish guy that debated there. His name was Alan, or I think he was Jewish, or he had friends that were. Anyway, he took me out one time. I didn't have anything romantic involved with him. And Larry Galizio ended up marrying a Jewish woman who I met and who I knew hated me by the way she acted. And one person that tried to get close to me was a man named Ben. And I don't know what Ben's religious background was. He said his dad was atheist and his mother was atheist, and he was atheist, and that is probably true. And the only thing that stands out with Ben, I thought he was funny. He's kind of a nerd, but he was very smart, and we had some interesting conversations. He one time tried to touch my leg or put his leg next to mine, closer to mine, and I moved away, which he didn't like. And we really didn't, after that point, after having many discussions and arguments for fun, he didn't really want to hang out as much, because I think he realized he wasn't going to get anywhere with me. But his name was Ben, and I do remember that he said his dad worked for NASA. And so he brought up Ayn Rand. He really liked Ayn Rand and wanted me to read different books. I thought that he was an interesting person to talk to. And he had been homeschooled most of his life. Had some quirks about him. Everything didn't appear to be from a really rich family, or didn't present himself in that way, but he was very smart and fun to talk to. The only thing that stands out in my mind is that sometimes towards the end, he did look at me in a slightly negative way. And the only thing that I would question about his interest in me was the fact that his family was involved with NASA, or his dad was. And I didn't know at the time that NASA had an interest in me because of the microchip teletorture stuff they were doing with these microchips, that after those were put into my body, the University of Utah Hospital, that hospital got major grant funding from NASA and the Department of Defense to do telesurgery, telepharmacy, and basically they got all their money, and they bought a bunch of new property as well, after they had tested the results out on me to see how well they could torture me from a remote location. So that's all I would say about that. Is I don't know that it's significant in any way, aside from the fact of who was drawn to me and maybe getting close to me. The other thing There was a man one time who said he was from England, that he'd done, or that he was English and he was from England, and I think he said his name was James, and he was in a poetry class. He acted like a spy. He was like he was only in the class to watch me, and watch me with hate in his eyes. And that was before I was even raped. So when I was first going to PCC, pretty much. I just remember that there were a few people who were definitely interested in me, but I didn't know why they were. I mean, I had no idea. And so aside, mainly I wanted to bring up the counseling thing. And then the other thing that came up later was that one of my cousins, while I was talking to Krista Schneider, different people started to get close to my family, like extended family members and friends. And I didn't realize at the time that somebody had gotten close to one of my cousins, who was Italian American, and not on my side. And then she was with somebody who's from the aerospace defense industry, and I don't believe that he was on my side either. And I will talk about those things later. I do think that that this Italian American that my cousin was with, he basically showed up and got my cousin pregnant right before, I guess probably 3 years before I had my son. So he got close to my cousin after I was already, so that was 2006, so that was 2003, in about 2003, I think, which was when I already had filed my lawsuits against the Archdiocese of Portland and Oregon and against the Abbey, and had attracted some attention from various groups. I had already been friends with, quote-unquote friends with Krista for some time by then, and she had already obtained a whole list of who my relatives were, where they lived, and what kind of work they did, and about all of my friends. So basically, it wasn't just me that was getting approached by people like Krista who just wanted to get information. There were others as well, and they have not worked in my son's interests at all. So that's what I have to fill in a few of the gaps. That's just a little bit, but I wanted to mention those things. And since I've already brought up the first occasion of a very strange kind of torture, or what I had kind of characterized as a bomb, or some kind of a weird compression thing, which had me and my son vomiting, and then he couldn't talk. By that time, she was my cousin who had been with the Italian American. I believe by that time she had already been with this other man who's working for the United States aerospace industry that works on projects that have to do with things like that. And she'd been working with him for about a year. So she kind of ended up, I think, getting close to one person after the other person that was connected more to the Department of Defense and the Schneiders of the world, and people who were not on my son's side. And I don't think she realized it.